No one ever tells you when a town is cursed. There is no warning sign on the highway, no voice on the radio saying you should turn around while you still can. Pine Hollow appeared ordinary at first glance, just another forgotten American town hidden between mountains and forest. But the moment my car crossed its limits, I felt something tighten inside my chest. The air seemed heavier, as if the forest itself was leaning closer to listen. The sun was sinking behind the hills, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple, and the shadows of the trees stretched across the road like long black fingers trying to pull me back. The wooden sign at the entrance creaked in the wind. Pine Hollow, population 2,143. The paint had peeled away so badly that some letters were barely visible. One corner of the sign had collapsed, and ivy crawled over the bottom like it was slowly burying the town's name. I slowed my car and stared at it longer than I should have. Something about the sign felt like a warning disguised as a welcome. I had come because of the stories. 3 disappearances in 6 months, all during full moons, all near the forest. Official reports called them accidents or animal attacks, but the pattern was too clean to ignore. As a journalist, I lived for patterns. I told myself this was just another small-town mystery waiting to be written into a long article that people would forget in a week. But Pine Hollow did not feel like a place that wanted to be written about. It felt like a place that wanted to be left alone. The forest surrounded the town on all sides, tall pine trees packed so tightly together that sunlight barely reached the ground beneath them. They formed a living wall, and the town existed like a fragile island in the middle of it. There was no clear border between civilization and wilderness. Houses stood only a few yards from the tree line. Backyards dissolved into shadow. Every road eventually pointed toward the forest. Main Street was quiet when I arrived. A few shops with faded signs. A gas station. One diner with a flickering neon light in the window. I parked and stepped out of my car. The silence was strange. No dogs barking. No children playing. Only the distant sound of wind brushing against pine needles. Inside the diner, the bell above the door rang too loudly. Every head turned at once. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze in the air. For a brief moment, it felt like I had walked into a photograph instead of a room. Then people slowly went back to their meals, but I could feel their eyes following me. I sat near the window and ordered coffee. The waitress was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and hands that trembled as she poured my cup. I thanked her and asked casually if the town had been busy lately. She hesitated. Busy with what? She asked. With people going missing. Her face stiffened. She glanced toward the kitchen, then toward the other customers. She leaned closer to me and whispered, "Things happen when the moon is full." I waited for her to laugh. She didn't. "You should leave before then," she added quietly. A man at the counter stood up and left without paying. Another woman crossed herself and looked down at her plate. No one argued. No one asked questions. Fear sat between them like an invisible guest. That night, I checked into a small roadside motel at the edge of town. My room faced the forest. The trees stood like black pillars against the silver sky. Moonlight slipped through the curtains and painted the walls with thin white lines. I tried to work. I wrote notes about the diner, the people, the silence. But my attention kept drifting toward the window. Around midnight, the sound came. It started low and distant, like the wind crying through a tunnel. Then it grew louder, longer, hollow. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a scream. It was something between pain and rage, something that carried intelligence inside it. The sound made my skin crawl. My heart began to pound without permission. I stood up and pulled on my jacket. The road outside was empty. Fog hugged the ground, glowing faintly under the moon. The forest looked deeper at night, as if it had gained new layers of darkness. The sound came again, closer this time. I followed it. Near the edge of the road, something lay in the grass. A man. He was sprawled on his side, half hidden by shadow. His clothes were torn as if something had dragged him. Dark stains covered his shirt and pants. I knelt beside him and spoke, but his eyes only fluttered open after several seconds. They were wide and unfocused, full of terror. It hunts when the moon rises, he whispered. It smells fear. His fingers gripped my sleeve with surprising strength. Don't let it find you. Then his body went still. Sirens cut through the night minutes later. The sheriff arrived with an ambulance. He studied the forest longer than he studied me. When I told him what I heard, he nodded without expression. Animal attack, he said. What kind of animal whispers? I asked. He didn't answer. The next morning, Pine Hollow pretended nothing had happened. Children waited for school buses. The diner reopened. Country music played at the gas station. But something had shifted. Doors closed faster. Windows stayed shut longer. People avoided the forest like it had grown teeth overnight. At the hospital, a nurse told me the man was alive but unconscious. When I asked his name, she refused to say. Instead, she gave me an address. Talk to Mrs. Holloway, she said. If anyone knows the truth, she does. Mrs. Holloway's house stood at the very edge of town. The forest pressed close to her backyard like it was trying to reclaim the land. Inside, every wall was covered with old photographs. Black and white faces stared at me from crooked frames. Soldiers, children, couples long dead. She poured tea and sat across from me. This town was built beside the forest, she said. And the forest remembers everything. She told me of a man who vanished 40 years ago during a full moon. When he returned, he was violent, afraid of mirrors, afraid of light. He locked himself inside his home and screamed at night. Days later, he disappeared again, this time forever. Legends don't grow from nothing, she whispered. They grow from blood. That evening, I found footprints near the dirt road. Large, uneven, too deep for a man, too narrow for a bear. They led into the forest. Then something moved between the trees. Tall, fast, watching. The howl returned, closer than ever. And the moon rose. The forest did not welcome visitors at night. It swallowed them. I stood frozen at the edge of the road, staring at the dark line of trees where the footprints disappeared. The moon hovered above like a pale witness, bright and merciless. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I took a step closer. The air smelled of wet earth and pine sap, sharp and cold in my lungs. Somewhere deep within the forest, branches cracked slowly, deliberately, as if something heavy was shifting its weight. I told myself it was just an animal, a bear, a deer, anything with a name that made sense. But fear is not logical. Fear listens to instinct, and my instinct screamed that I was not alone. The howl came again. This time it sounded closer. Too close. I turned and ran. The road back to town felt endless. My lungs burned as I sprinted past dark houses and silent storefronts. Porch lights flickered on as the sound echoed across Pine Hollow, bouncing between rooftops and empty streets. Dogs barked once, then fell silent. The howl followed me like a shadow, rising and falling with terrifying intelligence. I slammed the door of my motel room and locked it. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Outside, the forest whispered. Wind slid through the branches like breath through teeth. I sat on the bed with my back against the wall and waited for morning. Sleep never came. When the sun finally rose, Pine Hollow looked harmless again. The forest softened under daylight. Birds sang as if nothing had happened, but I could still feel the night clinging to my skin. At breakfast, the diner was quieter than before. Fewer people, more empty chairs. The waitress avoided my eyes. I overheard two men speaking in low voices about livestock found torn apart near the woods. One of them said, "It started again." The other told him to stop talking. I returned to Mrs. Holloway's house before noon. She was waiting on the porch, as if she had known I would come back. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded. She invited me inside and closed the door tightly behind us. The photographs on the wall seemed darker than before. She reached into a drawer and pulled out an old leather-bound journal. The pages were yellow and brittle. The handwriting inside was uneven, desperate. "This belonged to my grandfather," she said. "He was the town doctor." She read aloud. "The The journal spoke of a man bitten in the forest during a full moon. Fever, delusions, strength beyond reason, bones breaking and reforming beneath skin. The doctor wrote of how the man begged to be chained to his bed, afraid of what he might become. "He wasn't sick," Mrs. Holloway whispered. "He was changing." I asked her what the town did. "They locked him away. Then he escaped, and people began to disappear." She turned the final page slowly. "The forest took him back. That afternoon, Sheriff Miller visited the motel. He warned me not to walk near the woods after dark. He said accidents happen too easily there." "Do you believe the stories?" I asked him. He hesitated. "I believe people are scared." That night, the moon rose again, full and bright. Pine Hollow closed its doors early. Curtains shut, lights dimmed. The forest waited. I stood at my window and listened. The howl came at exactly midnight. Long, hollow, powerful. It rolled through the town like thunder. My stomach twisted. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door despite every part of me screaming not to. The road was empty again. Fog crawled over the ground. The sound came from the trees. Then I saw it. A shape stepped into the moonlight at the forest's edge. Tall, broad. Its outline was wrong. Too upright to be a wolf. Too twisted to be a man. Its fur shimmered silver under the moon. His head tilted as if listening. Our eyes met. I could not move. The creature's gaze felt ancient, filled with hunger and sorrow at once. His chest rose and fell slowly. Then it took a step forward. I ran. Branches tore at my jacket as I fled down the road. The sound of heavy footsteps followed behind me, crashing through undergrowth. The howl rose again, closer than before. I smelled wet fur and blood. Porch light flashed on ahead. Mrs. Holloway's house. I stumbled up her steps and pounded on the door. She opened it instantly and dragged me inside. We locked it and stood in darkness, listening. The footsteps stopped outside. Silence stretched. Then a low growl vibrated through the wood of the house. The windows rattled. Something circled the building slowly, breathing loudly. Mrs. Holloway clutched a silver cross necklace in her hand, though she never raised it. "It knows you saw it," she whispered. "Once it sees you, it remembers you." Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the sound faded back into the forest. When dawn arrived, the town found blood on the road near the forest. No body, only tracks. Sheriff Miller announced a curfew. No one argued. Before leaving Pine Hollow, I returned to the forest edge one last time. The footprints were gone. The wind erased everything. But the forest did not forget. As I drove away, the sign creaked in the breeze behind me. Pine Hollow disappeared in my rearview mirror, swallowed by trees. And somewhere deep within that forest, something howled again. Waiting.